Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at Uherský Brod in the Czech Republic visiting CZ, and we're taking a look at their brand new iteration of the Bren rifle. This is the CZ Bren 3, just recently introduced. Now, this is an evolution of the Bren 2. It doesn't fundamentally change anything. It's the same basic operating system, but very few of the parts are directly interchangeable, and they've made upgrades to like all of the major elements of the gun, really, with in particular an eye towards increasing the ruggedness and the durability of the gun. So, as you may be aware, there is like combat use of the CZ Bren 2 going on in recent years and months and days, and like field experience with the Bren 2 led to a number of elements, like ideas of where the gun can be improved. And this is basically how all military firearms development goes. If you look at any of the classic, well-regarded combat rifles out there, be they the AK, the AR, or really anything else, the initial versions always leave kind of something to be desired. Like there's usually the kernel of a really good idea. We could think about the Type 1 AKs, the very early AR-15s, or in this case, the Bren 805. And then the gun gets used. It's one thing to test something in the field, or to do official formal testing of it, but really you don't discover the small issues that need to be improved until you're making them in the tens of thousands and they're actually getting put into combat conditions. And so that's why we see the original milled AKs transition into AKMs. We see the M16 have issues in Vietnam and develop over the next couple of decades into like truly one of the most successful and reliable guns in the military world today. Well, the same thing happened with the Bren. The original 805 was the kernel of a really good idea. They develop it through. The Bren 2 is a major upgrade to it, and the Bren 3 is now sort of tweaking and improving to make a good product that much better. So let's take a closer look and let me show you all of the specific things they changed. All right, so here's our Bren 3. Let's start with a couple basic fundamental things. First off, the Bren 3 is available in 5.56 and 300 Blackout. The Bren 2 was 5.56 or 7.62 by 39. CZ has discontinued the 7.62 by 39 option, or rather, they're not offering it in the Bren 3. And frankly, that makes perfect sense to me because I really don't see there being a whole lot of market for that cartridge at this point. 300 Blackout makes a lot more sense. Now, this is an 11-inch barrel length. In 300 Blackout, they offer 7 and 9, and the 9-inch barrel actually has a longer handguard that's larger in diameter, so the suppressor fits inside the handguard. On 5.56, they offer this with 7-inch, which is surprisingly short for a 5.56, but they offer it 7, 11-inch like this, 14.5, or 16.5-inch. Now, starting at the front end, let's compare our Bren 3 to our Bren 2. So right off the bat, the handguard itself is a major difference. On the Bren 2, the receiver was a monolithic component all the way out to the front of the handguard. And so that made the style of handguard difficult to change. You know, you got what you got with the receiver, and that's what you were stuck with. The Bren 3 now has a detachable handguard, and we'll take it off in a moment. So this can be changed. They in fact have 3 different elements of this. They have the Mlok version here. They have a grenade launcher version, which is Mlok, but with a full-length Picatinny rail on the bottom for attaching an underbarrel grenade launcher. And then they also have a suppressor handguard that is larger in diameter so that you can fit a suppressor telescoped underneath the handguard. Pretty cool. There have been a couple changes made to the stocks. So the Bren 2 has this fairly serious angle to it. That's been made a lot more subtle. Frankly, nicer handling. This feels better. The Bren 2 had 3 extendable positions for the stock. The Bren 3, they've actually taken the stock from their BR, their 308 version, used it on here, so it has 4 positions instead of 3. Like, the 4th position is awfully long, but that does mean there are probably going to be some 6.5-foot tall supermen who can now very comfortably shoot the Bren 3. In addition, they've actually changed the disassembly method a bit and the stock in the process. So on the Bren 2, the stock mounted onto this plastic block, and this plastic block slid into the aluminum receiver. The problem with that is that over time, this plastic can get worn and it can make the stock a bit wobbly. On the Bren 3, they changed that up. So now the plastic stock locks into an aluminum sort of butt cap extension here. So this is what connects directly to the receiver. It's aluminum on aluminum. It's much more durable. And they've also modified it so you don't have to take this off. You don't have to take the stock off to disassemble the gun at all. All you have to do is unfold it. Now we do have to take the lower assembly off in order to continue disassembly. We'll get to that in just a moment. First, I want to mention the charging handle. This one has a standard charging handle on it, but the Bren 3 now has the option of either fixed or folding charging handles that can be on either side. And you can basically mix and match whatever configuration you'd like. So if you want a fixed charging handle on the left, folding one on the right, you can do that. If you want two folding ones, you can do that. Kind of pick whatever style suits you best there. All right, now let's take off the lower. That is just one pin in the front. It's a captive pin. The lower assembly comes off. This is completely unchanged. So this is pretty much the only component of the Bren 3 that's interchangeable, that doesn't have upgrades to it from the Bren 2. And kind of as a result, the handling of the Bren 3 is almost indistinguishable from the Bren 2. If you're a soldier using this, this is where basically you do most of your interacting with the gun. You're not going to notice much difference. The Bren 3 is just going to be a little bit better at putting up with horrible, terrible conditions and a whole lot of combat use. All right, with the grip assembly off, we can now just pull this block down and there we go. That comes out, recoil spring. Then we can drop the bolt out. The cocking handle is retained in the top of the receiver. The firing pin spring is a bit chunkier here on the Bren 3 than on the 2. The Bren 3 bolt is also definitely chunkier there. More substantively, they took the ejectors off the Bren 2 BR, that's the 308 version, which has dual plunger ejectors. And they went and added that system to the 5.56 rifle. So the Bren 3 has dual ejectors instead of the original Bren 2's single. And then the anti-bounce system in the Bren 3 bolt changed. So instead of being two rods down inside there, it's now this. There's a single spring here, and you have this reciprocating weight that acts as your anti-bounce device. One other thing about the stock, in addition to this regular standard stock, there's also the collapsing sort of PDW stock. On the Bren 2s, the receiver had to be different to accommodate that collapsing stock. On the Bren 3, you can see you've got this flat already machined into the receiver. That is for the stock bars for the collapsing stock. So all you have to do is take off the rear butt cap and put on the one with a collapsing stock, and you can have the PDW configuration. It's especially handy if you have, say, the 7-inch barrel, or perhaps one of the 300 Blackout setups. Now, let's go ahead and pull the handguard off. There are a total of 7 screws to take out to do that. We have 2 on the left, 2 on the right, 2 on the bottom, and then one last one up here. This is actually basically captures a locking latch. So this is the last one to do. Underneath these screws, we actually have a set of basically crush washers. So these are intended to be single-use washers that when you torque these screws down on top of them, this crushes down and prevents the screw from backing out. So when you change these out, you're supposed to replace these washers. Obviously, some people are not going to. If you don't, you do potentially have the risk of the screws backing out, because that's what these are meant to prevent. Now we've got the 2 screws on the bottom. So, of course, this isn't intended to be a quick change style of barrel. This is for modularity of the rifle, to change out what the setup is. All right, and now our last screw on top. All right, now our last screw is out. I will point out you do have to have the cocking handle back. If the bolt's in the gun, the bolt has to be in the rearward position so that it's not locked into the barrel extension. But once that's out of the way, you just push down on this locking catch. And the handguard slides right off the end of the gun. And then the barrel slides right out of the gun. This, by the way, leaves us with one additional feature I didn't mention before. We've got 4 screws in the left side of the gun. Not on the right, just on the left side. This is something that was not on the Bren 2 receiver. Now the reason for these is to hold in a steel guide rail right here. And this is the rail that the cam pin in the bolt is running on. And so what this does is, again, this is a durability and a product longevity feature. Instead of running on an aluminum rail that can eventually wear, this allows a steel rail, and should there eventually actually be wear on this rail, it can be replaced, allowing the receiver to have an even longer lifespan. One of the other fairly substantive upgrades to the Bren 3 is in the gas system, where the Bren 2 had a 3-position gas system, but it was standard, adverse condition, and cut off, like gas system completely turned off for rifle grenades. The Bren 3 has changed that to standard, suppressed, and adverse condition, which for today's use I think makes a lot more sense than having the cutoff for rifle grenades. We can go ahead and take this out completely by detaching that, pull out the gas block, and then we can pull out the piston. So the Bren 3 has a gas plug and a 1-piece gas piston. The Bren 2 had a gas plug and a 2-part gas piston. So they've simplified it. They've lightened the gas system, and where they got extra, they got some bonus weight from making a lighter gas block, as well as a lighter handguard. In addition, the gas block is now screwed in place here, instead of being pinned as on the Bren 2, and the barrel profile has been increased in diameter. So the 2 and 3 are essentially the same weight guns, given the same barrel length. The Bren 3 is lighter in the handguard and the gas system, and they balanced it out by making the barrel heavier. The heavier barrel allows for more sustained fire, and it allows for a little bit of more leeway for really rough handling when you get soldiers who will inevitably use the muzzle of their barrel as a pry bar or as a ledge to stand on, or all sorts of other things that would make gun collectors totally cringe. All right, so there's the Bren 3 completely field stripped. We do need to take a minute here and talk about the market availability of this, because while it has been released and it is going into production, this is only available right now as a select fire military rifle. So I'm sure at some point they will release this. They will release a semi-auto version of the Bren 3, and I look forward to that date, because I think a lot of these improvements would be pretty cool for people, especially, to my mind, especially the more durable stock and the modular handguards. I think the modular barrel length is something a lot of people talk about wanting, but I don't know that that many people actually get different barrels and swap them out on their rifles. Anyway, unfortunately, there is no specific date that, well, CZ at least hasn't shared a date with me with when they plan to release a semi-auto version of this. All right, so that's the CZ Bren 3. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. I'd like to give a really big thanks to CZ for giving me the opportunity to come here and take a look at this. Really? We can do that? All right, we're gonna just hit the range and put a few rounds through this one to see how it shoots.